Hello, guys. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Indiana Sports Connection. So we had on Saturday Indiana Hoosiers playing against the Ohio State Buckeyes. I heard things all over the globe what was going to happen with Indiana. I heard Rick Bozich say it's going to be like 57-10. Like Indiana had no chance of even covering the spread. I heard other people, but I really heard nobody think that Indiana had any type of chance in this game. The defense came out and had a stellar performance. That all coming up in this episode of Indiana Sports Connection. But first, let's thank our sponsor, Reynolds Wrap. If you want to have a safe, easy time cleaning up outside, wrap everything in Reynolds Wrap, an American company, American-made aluminum foil. This stuff is an absolute lifesaver. If you got little kids, you got little things you got to do, put it on top of your grill, use it for all sorts of things, cover things with it. Reynolds Wrap, our sponsor. Thank you so much to them. Now let's get right into talking about what's happening with the Indiana Hoosiers football team. I would say let's go over some stats from the game here first. So just team stats. We got total yards, Indiana 153, Ohio State 380. That was the part of the game that definitely could have been improved on. One thing we learned from this game is Trace Jackson Davis, TJD, his brother, now plays on Indiana. Sorsby, here's the big conflict I see with Tom Allen going forward. You have to pick one quarterback to play in these games. You can't split practice time in a 5-day practice week between two quarterbacks. You either have to choose Jackson or Sorsby. Sorsby started the game. I think he played like 2 series to start, and then he goes right to Jackson. So they're just in a situation where Jackson's more of a running quarterback. He only really plays like the triple option, and Sorsby can throw the ball down the field. Tom Allen, I mean, I know it seems very simple, but you got to choose one or the other. You can't choose both, or else you're just going to be mediocre or less at both if that's what your game plan is going to be going forward. So the offense was totally awful, and we've not seen that in the past from Indiana offenses. I mean, we've had quarterbacks like Sudfeld. We've had pretty good wide receivers for Indiana's take, and we just aren't getting that anymore. That being said, the defense is much improved from what it was like 10 years ago. Tom Allen, definitely a defensive coach, but that middle linebacker, let's see, his stats on the game were... Yeah, Casey, 9 tackles, number 44. He's the team captain playing middle linebacker. Had some really great tackles. He had like 3 tackles for 2 assists, 9 tackles. He didn't have any sacks. But a great game by him. And also Moore and Toomer both had some unbelievable plays too on defense. One thing that I thought Ohio State was going to be able to do against this Indiana defense was get out on the perimeter, because they have a lot more speed than Indiana has on defense. So, but Indiana was able to kind of bottle them up, keep them in the center of the field. When teams like Ohio State get on that long side of the field, normally they can get to the perimeter. They didn't do that. So 23-10, I mean, it was, or 23-3 was the final score. And I mean, I heard a lot of people saying it was going to be like 56. I mean, like Ohio State was just going to lay a lot of points on Indiana. So, all right, let's look at. So the other bright spot for Indiana, we're going to talk about the good, bad, and the ugly on this show. Lucas, definitely going forward, he's their biggest playmaker. He's probably their only playmaker. This guy, he's returning punts, and he's playing some at running back, and they're trying to get him the ball in the perimeter. The problem is they only have one player that can get to the perimeter and make plays like that, and everybody knows it's him. So designing plays that are going to be disguising plays where misdirection and you can get him out into some open space, it's going to be difficult for Indiana, but you could definitely see that he can make some big time plays going forward for the Hoosiers. But And receiving, go over the stats for receivers. I mean, Cam Camper, I think he was the only receiver I really knew going into this game. I'll just be honest, like, I did not do a ton of research on Indiana. Coming into this game, it was nearly, I mean, just had no clue what to expect from Indiana. We didn't know who their quarterback was going to be. We didn't know a lot of the players. They've had a lot of turnover in the past few years, and they've been really awful in the past few years too. So, I mean, they kind of need turnover to get some new faces in there. So Cam Camper led them in receiving with 3 receptions for 35 yards. That is awful for college football. I mean, you got to get a guy over the middle. You got to be able to at least let it fly a few times. EJ Williams, who he's been on the team, and he's really, I know him more for dropping some long passes, but he had 1 catch for 19 yards. Carter had 1 catch for 16 yards, and McCauley, who I think he played some quarterback for them, he had 1 catch for 6 yards, but they moved him to wide receiver. One bright spot, I would say Henderson. They did run the ball straight up the middle, and they weren't losing yardage, so they were getting like a good 3 to 4 yards. They weren't picking up a ton of first downs. I remember one stat came up during the game. They were like 1 for 8 on 3rd down. That's tough. I mean, if you can't get more than 3 or 4 yards of play in a college game, I mean, you're gonna struggle. That's just all there is to it. But for Ohio State, so coming in on the radio right before the game, I heard this guy, McCord, he actually went to high school with Marvin Harrison Jr. So I just thought, God, the rich just keep getting richer because, I mean, you got these 2 guys, the best receiver, who's probably going to be the #1 pick in the NFL draft this next year, and you got his high school teammate coming in that he already has connections with. When I heard that, that's when I started thinking it could be like a 56-0 game, but Indiana defense held strong the entire time. So yeah, McCord, he was 20 of 33, 239 yards and 1 interception. So he didn't go wild on the Hoosiers. I think they have a lot to try to look positive towards because, hey, we all know this. Indiana, normal Indiana seasons are, they play like Wyoming, they play like Middle Tennessee State, they play Ball State, they play like 3 or 4 really crappy teams. I think at one point they were like undefeated in the month of September, like in the last 10 years. So they had always gotten past those easy teams, but then once they got into the thick of the Big Ten season, they really faltered. So right here we can see it's like they played Ohio State right off the bat. They get that test and they can, but I would say they really have some good things moving forward that they can take from this game and be like, hey, at least one of the top teams in the country, because Ohio State could very well go out there 3 weeks from now and just stomp like Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame's ranked 13th, and we've seen that before. We've seen Notre Dame be ranked high and get really like beat badly, or same with other teams that are ranked within the top 10, like Clemson, or other teams just can't stack up against a team like Ohio State, and they just get slaughtered by them. So Indiana hung in there. They hung tough. I'd say there's some good to take out of this, but their offense is absolutely abysmal to watch, and they got to pick somebody, or Jackson, TJD's brother, he's got to. Maybe it was just, I mean, Ohio State is always known for having really great secondary play. So was it the secondary that was not allowing him to get the ball down the field because they were just covered so tightly and they didn't want to make that big mistake where the game was going to get out of hand? Or, I mean, moving forward, we're going to know this more and more by how they play against some weaker teams. But yeah, it's just hard to say. First game of the year. I mean, one thing about college football is, I mean, we've seen giants fall in the first week. Like, I mean, the one I always remember is Michigan losing to Appalachian State, but they don't have any preseason like the pros. There's no preseason, no nothing. So you come into these games just completely raw. A lot of new players coming in, and it's just really hard to know what to expect. But if you did bet on the Hoosiers to cover the spread, they were 30-point underdogs. I think that's what most people were talking about all week, which tells you the people in Las Vegas think that the Hoosiers are going to be one of the worst teams in the whole country. I don't know about that. I think they did prove that they're not one of the worst teams in the whole country. Not much more you can say about that game. It's like we saw them out there in the uniforms. I did really think the coverage of the game on CBS was great. Brad Nessler did the game. There was a lot of great aerial coverage of the stadium, and it looked like it wasn't sold out, but there was a pretty raucous crowd in there, probably mostly Ohio State fans, but it's just good to see Indiana in like a primetime game like that, and they didn't get slaughtered but hey, losing is still losing, and they lost, and we're just going to have to see going forward what they're going to be. Until next time, stay classy out there, Colts fans.